So, I want you to picture a machine that is roughly the size of a three-story building,
Yeah.
and it clamps down with a weight of like 1,500
That
elephants.
is a massive machine.
Right. And it takes just milliseconds for this mechanical behemoth to inject molten metal and just instantly replace 100 years of automotive history.
It really is wild to think about.
It is, because today we're looking at a $5 billion gamble by Ford. They're intentionally tearing down Henry Ford's greatest invention, the moving assembly line, basically just to survive the brutal electric vehicle price war.
Yeah, and to do this, we're pulling from a few different layers of reporting.
Right. Our mission for this deep dive is to unpack this fascinating report from Repairer Driven News.
Exactly, and that article draws on some incredibly granular technical supply chain data from a LinkedIn post by Luca Greco. He's the analyst who writes the Industry Arsenal Gigacasting newsletter.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and we are also cross-referencing his analysis with the actual blueprints and metrics laid out in a recent Ford news release. So we're looking at the intersection of heavy industrial engineering and consumer pricing.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to understand the scale of what is happening, we can't just talk about abstract corporate strategy,
No, you have to look at the literal heavy machinery.
Exactly. Ford's CEO, Jim Farley, didn't just announce a minor tweak. He announced a $5 billion investment. And out of that massive pot, $2 billion is going to renovate one single location.
The Louisville assembly plant.
Right. And spending $2 billion on a single facility, I mean, you aren't just changing the tooling, you are changing the fundamental anatomy of the building itself.
You are gutting the building and starting over completely. $2 billion for a single plant is a staggering sum. But when you look at what they are physically installing, the price tag makes sense.
What exactly are they putting in there?
According to the reporting, they're taking delivery of these massive 9,000-ton die-casting machines supplied by the Buehler Group.
Wow.
Yeah, a Swiss manufacturing giant. And Ford is calling this new manufacturing process Unicasting.
Unicasting, which, for anyone following the broader EV space, that sounds an awful lot like the gigacasting process we've been hearing about for the last few years.
It is the exact same fundamental engineering philosophy. They're just utilizing Ford's specific terminology for their proprietary applications.
Got it.
But we really need to pause and understand the physics of what a 9,000-ton machine actually does, because it defies the conventional logic of how cars have been made for generations.
How so?
Well, for decades, the front and rear sections of a car's frame were made up of dozens, sometimes upwards of 100, smaller stamped sheet metal parts.
Right. All welded together?
Exactly. You'd have this highly complex choreography of robots and humans painstakingly welding and riveting all these little pieces to build a core strong enough to survive a crash.
So, I hear a phrase like 9,000-ton machine, and my brain immediately visualizes a giant cartoon anvil dropping from the ceiling to crush a car flat.
Right, a giant press.
Yeah. What is that 9,000 tons of force actually doing? Because if you are just pouring liquid metal into a mold, why do you need the weight of a freight train to do it?
That is the perfect question.
Yeah.
Because the intuitive mental model of pouring liquid into a mold, like pouring water into an ice cube tray, that is completely wrong here.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Imagine trying to hold a high-pressure fire hose with your thumb over the nozzle. The water wants to blast your thumb away with immense kinetic energy.
Oh, I see.
That is what is happening inside these Buehler machines. But instead of water, it is thousands of pounds of molten liquid aluminum being injected into a hollow steel cavity in mere milliseconds.
So the pressure trying to escape the mold is just astronomical.
Staggering. The liquid metal is traveling at such high velocity, it essentially wants to blow the two halves of the massive steel mold apart like a bomb. So those 9,000 tons, that refers to the clamping force. The machine requires 9,000 tons of continuous pressure just to keep the mold perfectly sealed shut while the aluminum fills every microscopic crevice and cools.
That is insane.
And what comes out of that machine a few moments later isn't a collection of parts. It is a massive, single-piece aluminum structural core. One continuous piece for the entire front of the vehicle and one for the rear.
But wait, if you are injecting that volume of superheated liquid metal into a mold, doesn't it warp when it cools down?
You would think so, yeah.
Like if I pour boiling water into a cheap plastic cup, it deforms immediately. How are they instantly cooling a massive block of aluminum without the metal shrinking or bending?
That is where the proprietary metallurgy and the internal cooling channels come into play. The steel molds are laced with complex internal plumbing that regulates the temperature with absolute precision.
So it cools evenly.
Exactly, ensuring the aluminum solidifies uniformly. It is a monumental feat of thermodynamic engineering. And the trade-off for mastering that physics is you entirely eliminate the stamping presses, the welding robots, and the hundreds of individual steel parts.
If this single casting lets you replace dozens of pieces, it must fundamentally change the internal plumbing and architecture of the entire vehicle.
Oh, it changes everything.
Because you no longer have a hollow metal cage inching down a line that workers have to reach inside of.
Right.
Ford is officially calling this new setup the Ford Universal EV Production System. And they released some statistics that honestly made me do a double take.
Let's hear them.
According to the release, this new platform reduces the total number of parts by 20% compared to a typical vehicle. It requires 25% fewer fasteners. So, screws, bolts, clips.
That's significant.
But here's where it gets really interesting. The wiring harness.
Ah, the central nervous system of the vehicle.
Exactly. The release states that the wiring harness in this new midsize truck will be 4,000 feet shorter and 10 kilograms, so 22 pounds, lighter than the one used in Ford's first-generation electric SUV.
That is a massive reduction.
Let's just pause on the raw math for a second. 4,000 feet is roughly 3/4 of a mile. How on earth was there nearly a mile of excess wire in early EVs? Did automakers just lazily copy the incredibly complex layouts of gas-powered cars because they were in a rush?
Well, lazily might be a harsh word, but structurally that is exactly what happened.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, when the legacy automotive industry first scrambled to produce electric vehicles, they were largely adapting platforms originally designed for internal combustion engines.
Right.
They were shoehorning battery packs and electric motors into physical spaces meant for gas tanks and exhaust pipes. When you do that, you are forced to route your wiring in incredibly convoluted ways just to navigate around a chassis that wasn't designed for an electric architecture.
You're basically weaving copper wire through an obstacle course.
Exactly. And compounding that problem is the legacy approach to computing in cars. Early EV designs were deeply fragmented.
How do you mean?
Well, you had a different electronic control unit, like a localized mini computer, for every single little feature. One for the windows, one for the seats, one for the wipers.
Ah, okay.
And every single one of those modules needed its own dedicated copper wiring routed all the way back to the main power source. It was a giant bowl of copper spaghetti hidden behind the dashboard.
But with this universal EV production system, they are designing it natively as an electric vehicle from the ground up, right? Built around these massive unicast structures.
Yes, and the implications of shedding 4,000 feet of wire are profound across multiple vectors. First, there's the physical weight.
22 pounds.
Right. That might not sound like a massive deal if you are driving a heavy gas truck, but in the EV world, weight is the ultimate enemy. Unnecessary mass drains the battery faster. Shedding dead copper weight directly translates to better battery range, which is the #1 metric consumers care about.
Not to mention the pure commodity cost. 4,000 feet of automotive-grade copper wiring is incredibly expensive. That alone has to be a massive saving per unit.
It is a massive saving on the bill of materials.
Yeah.
But beyond the cost and the weight, think about the long-term reliability.
Oh, sure.
Every single one of those eliminated fasteners and every inch of that eliminated wire represents an eliminated point of failure.
That makes total sense.
When you have 20% fewer parts and 3/4 of a mile less wire, you have fewer things to rattle loose on a dirt road, fewer electrical connections that can short out over the lifespan of the vehicle. By radically simplifying the anatomy of the car, they are fundamentally increasing its baseline reliability.
So if you don't have this massive nervous system, and instead you have these huge, solid front and rear unicast blocks, it completely changes the geography of the factory itself.
Completely.
And this is where we get to the death of the traditional assembly line. Because the report notes that Ford is moving away from a linear assembly line in favor of what they call an assembly tree.
The assembly tree is a total paradigm shift. It moves manufacturing from a linear process to a parallel process.
So instead of a single long line where a hollow car frame slowly crawls along for miles, getting built piece by piece, Ford is now running 3 distinct subassemblies down their own lines simultaneously.
Exactly.
It's less like building a house from the foundation up and more like modern computer architecture. You're moving to a plug-and-play system. The front module, the rear module, and the structural battery, they are built independently and then just snap into a central hub.
And that modularity is the direct result of the unicasting process. Because the front casting is structurally rigid the second it leaves the machine, workers can immediately start bolting the suspension and electric motors directly to it,
Wow. Okay.
completely independent of the rest of the car. And the third module is the structural battery pack itself.
Right.
The release says this battery floor is assembled on its own line, complete with the seats, the center console, and the carpeting fully attached to it before it ever meets the rest of the truck.
But hold on. I have to push back on the physics of this parallel process.
Okay, go ahead.
If you are building the front third of the car on one side of the factory and the rear third on a completely different line, how do you ensure the microscopic tolerances match up perfectly when they finally meet in the middle?
Yeah.
Because in a traditional car, you weld the whole cage together first so you know it's straight. If you build them separately and one line is a millimeter off, when you try to snap them together, the doors won't shut and the whole car is ruined.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the historical irony here is brilliant, and it answers your exact concern.
Okay.
The reason Henry Ford had to build the entire metal cage first on a continuous line was because of tolerance stacking. When you weld 100 small stamped pieces of steel together, every single weld introduces a microscopic variance.
Right, they add up.
By the time you weld piece number 100, those tiny variances have stacked, and the frame might be slightly warped. You had to measure the final cage and adjust.
Ah, so the variance was built into the old process.
Exactly. But with unicasting, there is zero tolerance stacking. The front structure is one single piece of cast aluminum. Its dimensions are absolute and identical every single time it comes out of the mold.
Oh, I see.
The structural battery tray is machined to absolute perfection. Because the foundational pieces are perfectly uniform, you can build them in parallel on completely different sides of the factory, knowing with mathematical certainty that they will bolt together flawlessly.
That is wild. You are engineering the variance out of the material itself?
And the data proves why this parallel processing is so vital. The release explicitly states that this assembly tree method results in 40% fewer workstations dock to dock in the plant.
40%.
And it yields a 15% faster overall assembly time. But I want to focus on what this means for the human beings actually standing on the floor, because the details about how the operators work now are phenomenal.
Oh, right, the logistics of the kits.
Yes. Because the vehicle is broken down into these highly accessible subassemblies, the flow of parts to the workers can be perfectly choreographed. In a traditional plant, a worker might have to turn around, walk to a bin of loose bolts, visually identify the correct one, figure out which power drill they need, walk back to the car, and awkwardly lean inside a half-built cage to install it.
Which introduces physical fatigue and, more importantly, the chance for human error. Like, if you are tired, you grab the wrong bolt.
The assembly tree entirely eliminates that friction. The release notes that parts travel down the line to the operators in specific pre-organized kits. Within that kit, every single fastener, barcode scanner, and power tool required for that exact 60-second job is included.
That's so efficient.
But it goes a crucial step further. The tools and parts are presented in the correct orientation for immediate use.
So the worker doesn't even have to flip the drill around in their hand or spin the bolt to find the thread. It is handed to them the way a surgical nurse hands a scalpel to a surgeon.
It is an ergonomic masterpiece. The worker isn't searching. They aren't awkwardly reaching. The exact tool is presented in the exact position their hand naturally grasps it.
Wow.
When you drastically reduce the cognitive load of decision-making and eliminate the physical strain, worker fatigue plummets. And when fatigue drops, assembly mistakes disappear, and the speed of the line naturally increases.
Which perfectly explains that 15% faster assembly time.
Yes, exactly.
And all of this, I mean, the billions of dollars invested, the staggering physics of the 9,000-ton machines, the 3/4 of a mile of deleted wire, these surgical worker kits, all of this highly orchestrated ballet is in service of one specific payoff for the consumer. And that is the sticker price.
The absolute holy grail of the EV market right now. Affordability.
According to the Repairer-driven news article, the very first vehicle to be produced under this new system is a mid-size electric truck called the Fathom. And the headline feature isn't its towing capacity or some autonomous driving gimmick. It's the price. The Fathom is priced at under $30,000.
A sub-$30,000 electric truck.
Yeah.
If they achieve that, it completely disrupts the automotive market.
So what does this all mean? Because I have to play the cynic here.
Sure.
As a consumer, I feel like the auto industry has cried wolf on this exact topic for a decade. We have heard massive promises about cheap EVs for years.
We have.
Automakers will hold a flashy press conference, hyping up a $35,000 model, and by the time it hits the lot 3 years later, after inflation and dealer add-ons, you can't walk out the door for less than 45 or 50,000.
Right.
Why should we believe the Fathom will actually hit that promised sub 30,000 mark? Is it just more marketing hype designed to boost the stock price?
It is a completely fair skepticism,
Yeah?
and history gives you every right to feel that way.
Right.
But this is where we have to ground our answer firmly in the economics of manufacturing and the actual metrics we just unpacked.
Okay, let's look at the numbers.
In the past, when legacy companies promised cheap EVs, they were often engaging in what you might call a hope-based strategy. They were hoping that global battery prices would magically plummet, or they planned to take a massive financial loss on the base model just to get people into the ecosystem.
Basically hoping the broader market would solve their internal cost problem for them.
Exactly. But the Fathom's $30,000 price tag isn't based on hope, and it isn't based on taking a loss. It is the direct mathematical result of physical changes in reality.
Meaning the factory itself.
Right. You cannot sell a complex machine for dramatically less money unless it literally costs you dramatically less time, labor, and material to build it. Let's look at the 40% fewer workstations. How does that equal a cheaper truck?
Less floor space.
In manufacturing, your footprint is a massive fixed cost. If you eliminate 40% of the workstations, you need a smaller building. That means less electricity for lighting, less HVAC to heat and cool the space, lower property taxes. You have slashed your overhead.
So you are amortizing a much smaller fixed cost over every single vehicle that rolls out the door.
Precisely. Now look at the 15% faster build time. The automotive industry is heavily reliant on utilization rates.
Yep.
If you can build a truck 15% faster, you are producing significantly more units per hour. Your labor cost per vehicle plummets because the worker is completing more trucks in the same shift. And then you layer on the 20% fewer parts. That is a massive reduction in raw material costs, warehousing, and shipping.
So they aren't just artificially lowering the price tag at the dealership. They have structurally removed the costs from the vehicle's DNA before it even reaches the assembly line.
Yes. The Fathom isn't just a new truck. It is the physical proof of concept for the universal EV production system. If the Louisville plant comes online and executes this assembly tree architecture, the under $30,000 price isn't a promotional gimmick. It becomes the new baseline reality of how cheaply a high-quality electric vehicle can be manufactured.
It's just incredible to step back and look at the whole picture. We started this deep dive looking at a $5 billion corporate gamble. We saw $2 billion poured into the Louisville assembly plant just to house these colossal 9,000-ton Bueller machines, taming the physics of molten aluminum.
Yeah.
We watched Henry Ford's traditional line shatter into the parallel assembly tree, where a truck is built in modular branches that all come together perfectly at the end, and the result is the Fathom, a $30,000 truck that achieves true affordability not by cutting corners, but by fundamentally tearing down a century-old method of manufacturing. It really is a testament to the idea that sometimes you have to cannibalize your own legacy to move forward.
It really is a masterclass in industrial evolution. But this raises an important question, and it's something I want to leave our listeners to chew on as we wrap up.
Okay, what is it?
We have to remember the perspective of the primary source material we use today. The article detailing all of this incredible innovation was published by Repair Driven News.
Right, the trade publication for collision repair shops and mechanics.
Exactly. Ford has undoubtedly cracked the code on how to make electric vehicles incredibly cheap to build. They are saving billions by turning dozens of small, easily bolt-on metal pieces into massive, single-piece aluminum unicasts. But what happens to the consumer after they buy that affordable truck?
Oh, wait.
What happens when you are pulling out of the grocery store and you get into a standard 10-mile-per-hour fender bender?
Oh, no.
In an older vehicle, a minor crash crunches a few of those stamped steel pieces. A local mechanic unbolts the crumpled fender, orders a new one, bolts it on, and you drive home.
Gut.
But if the entire front third of the Fathom is one continuous, intricately molded, unbendable block of cast aluminum, what happens to that impact force?
You can't just bend it back into shape.
Right. Can a local independent mechanic easily fix a cracked 9,000-ton structural core? Or will a relatively minor crash compromise that single-piece frame so fundamentally that the entire vehicle has to be totaled by the insurance company?
No.
They might have just designed a vehicle that is incredibly cheap to buy, but economically impossible to fix.
That is a terrifying trade-off.
Yeah.
We've spent this whole time looking at the brilliance of the factory floor, but the real shockwaves of this engineering pivot might hit the moment this truck pulls out of the driveway.
Yep.
We will have to leave it there. Keep questioning how the world is put together.